Happy day to one and all present here. Welcome everyone. Thank you all for finding time amidst your busy professional and personal commitment and joining us for today's webinar. I am Dr. Shakti Kumaresh, Head Computer Applications, MOP Vaishnav College for Women. MOP Vaishnav College for Women is committed to the goals of attracting and supporting top caliber women students in the areas of higher education. Today, the Department of Computer Science, MOP Vaishnav College for Women, organizes a webinar on the topic Artificial Intelligence. This is the third webinar in series organized by the Department of Computer Science. Artificial intelligence is a very popular and trending subject that is widely discussed in technology and in business circles. With the advancement in technology, we are already connected to AI in one way or the other, like Alexa, which we all use, which involves AI technologies like speech recognition and natural language processing. It is therefore vital that we gain more knowledge on this trending topic. We have with us today Mr. Ramshri Gautam, Lead Data Scientist, Right Hand Cybersecurity, to give insight into AI. Now, I would like to turn time to our beloved and dynamic principal, Dr. Lalita Balakrishnan, Principal, MOP Vaishnav College for Women, and request her to share few words. Over to you, ma'am.
Happy day. I welcome you all to this third webinar in the series conducted by the Department of Computer Science, MOP Vaishnav College for Women. The topic for today's webinar is Artificial Intelligence, something which we all need to know and enhance our knowledge on. I am very grateful to the resource person, Mr. Gautam, for having consented to be part of our webinar. I also congratulate Dr. Shakti Kumaresh and Ms. Jayanti Jayant for having put together this program. I welcome all the participants to this webinar, and I really hope at the end of the session we are all the better for having attended the program.
Thank you, ma'am. Happy day. We have amidst us Mr. Ram Sri Gautam. He is currently working as lead data scientist at Right Hand Cybersecurity. He finished his bachelor's from BITS Pilani Goa campus and master's from Arizona State University. He has spent 6 years in Silicon Valley building AI products for startups and large corporations. Most recently, he was a co-founder and CTO of a funded AI startup based out of Singapore. It's a pleasure and privilege to have you join us, sir. Welcome to the forum. Today, he will be giving us his insights on artificial intelligence in present-day industry and how to prepare students for AI jobs. Over to you, sir.
Thank you very much, Jayanti. It is my pleasure to present to a wider audience from MOP Vaishnav College for Women. Thank you for giving me the opportunity, and we will get started by sharing my screen and starting the presentation. Good morning, everyone. So AI is everywhere, and today what we are going to see is as a small introduction to AI and preparing students for jobs in AI. So today we will go deeper into demystifying all the terms of AI like machine learning, deep learning, computer vision, data science, and understand on a higher level all of them, and also help students prepare for jobs in AI. That is what we are going to see today. Let's get started. Initially, a short introduction about me. So I'm Ramsri. I'm currently working as lead data scientist at Right Hand Cybersecurity. It's a company based out of Singapore, and I work remotely from Hyderabad. And last year, I was co-founder and CTO of a AI edtech startup based out of Singapore. And before that, I spent 5 to 6 years in Silicon Valley at startups and large companies building AI products. Coming to my education background, I graduated from BITS Pilani Goa campus in 2011 with a bachelor's in electrical engineering, and then immediately went on to do my master's in computer vision and image processing at Arizona State University. Now, let's get started with the core idea. What is artificial intelligence? So, in short, giving computers or machines the ability to think just as intelligently as humans is artificial intelligence. And in some places with a lot of data, probably artificial intelligence machines can perform better than any individual human can ever do. And the goal of AI is to capture this collective intelligence of humans that we have as we have evolved and do a given task better than any individual human can do. So I focus mostly on the practical applications, and my goal always is to understand everything practically. So I'll introduce definitions, but we will understand the definitions deeper with practical examples. So, what are the AI applications that we see in modern day world around us? So, one of the things is self-driving cars. So, for those who are not familiar with the idea, right now we have cab drivers that drive cabs and take us from destination A to B. So, in countries across the world, there is significant research that is going on currently to automate this process, where an artificial intelligence system will use cameras as well as uh, different sensors to navigate on the road and take us from place A to place B without a human on board as a cab driver. Those are self driving cars. And you might have seen language translation, which is, let's say, Google Translate that you use every day if you do not understand something in a different language. And another example is credit card fraud. So if you're doing any transaction completely from a new country, then automatically credit card companies have created credit card fraud artificial intelligent machines that identify in real time if there is a fraud, and then immediately call the person or send them an email and inform about it. And another example is artificial intelligence voices like Siri, Google Home, Alexa that you interact with in your everyday. And since you're live on YouTube, you might know that whenever you're watching any YouTube video, you might get any new video as recommendation. So all those recommendation engines that automatically suggest what do you want to watch next, they are also part of AI. And facial recognition technologies. So in China and many countries across the world, we have facial recognition that automatically do check in and check out at airports. Of course, some of them are not live yet, but they are in trial phases. But all the facial recognition systems, as well as for other cards, we use our fingerprint, thumb, and automatically it matches to our original database. So all that is also that fingerprint matching is also an application of artificial intelligence. So now that you have got a brief understanding of what AI is and what are the examples that you see of AI in and around us, let's go a little bit deeper into understanding AI and what are the different components of it. Because in real world, you hear quite a lot of terms like machine learning, deep learning, NLP, computer vision, AI, data science. So today we will try to demystify all these terms, organize them in a very chartered manner so that we have an idea of where exactly things fall. So the first umbrella is the bigger umbrella is artificial intelligence. And now under artificial intelligence, we have things like machine learning, natural language processing, computer vision, robotics, and manufacturing optimization. All of these come under AI. So under machine learning, again, there are several set of algorithms that are categorized as supervised learning and unsupervised learning. So in unsupervised learning, There are algorithms like deep learning, decision trees, support vector machines, all of these. And so we will go into understanding each of these with practical applications. That those are the coming up slides. But this is just to get an overview how things fall under artificial intelligence. You have these main four branches, and each branch is again divided. So let's say, for example, natural language processing (NLP), that has again speech and text applications differently. So when I mean speech, probably Alexa falls under speech application. Then language translation like Google Translate falls under text application. So having this general understanding, we will go deeper and understand more each of the terms. So first thing that is to clarify is data science. One thing that is to understand is that data science is a much bigger umbrella than artificial intelligence. So formal definition is data science is a comprehensive process that involves data collection, data cleaning, data visualization, as well as using various statistical and machine learning or AI techniques to solve a problem. So if you look at the diagram that we have, data science is equal to all the data things where you store things in database or raw files, then you load them and clean them up, then you run some statistics on top of the data, and then what you do is once you collect and process all the data, you use several kinds of algorithms, which is which we call as applied AI algorithms on top of that, and try to build models that can do predictive analysis or classification analysis with like all the practical examples that we have seen. Great. Now, with this understanding, let's go a little bit deeper into each of the terms that we have seen. So, coming on to the topic of machine learning. So, what is machine learning? So machine learning, as we have seen, falls under the umbrella of AI. It is another toolkit under the umbrella of artificial intelligence. And what it essentially means is, can we make machines learn something automatically without telling them explicitly how to do it? So we will always take example of a small kid trying to learn things. So let's start from there. So you don't always try to teach the kid everything from ground up. You probably give them few examples and they will learn to automatically uh, do a given task from there on with their initial learning. So transferring that same how a kid learns and how an amount of knowledge that we gain from understanding something is directly applied to a new situation. That is what machine learning is, where we give some data and it will automatically learn. The machine learning model will automatically learn, and without programming explicitly with rules, again it will try to do the task next time when it encounters it. So a lot with the definitions, but our focus will be on trying to understanding machine learning from a practical perspective. So we will delve deeper into that. So again, under machine learning, we have supervised machine learning, unsupervised machine learning, and reinforcement learning. So we will try to understand each of these topics on a higher level. Again, so what is supervised learning? Let's say we are trying to teach a kid to identify males versus females, and what the training that data that we have is, let's say, our family picture album. So you have, let's say, family marriage or something happens, we have albums that are created where we go through all the photos and try. So let's say you pick up one of the album and you try to show individual images of persons to a small kid and telling them to identify whether he or she is male or female. So that task of giving explicitly some, let's say, 100 images of males and 100 images of females, and trying to teach a kid how to differentiate between them, which is a labeled task. A labeled task means a task where we have explicitly mentioned what category does it belong to. So here our data set is 100 images of males and 100 images of females. Now that is a label task, and if you are giving that label task and making a kid learn on top of that, then that is called supervised learning. Now, before going deeper into supervised learning, just let us understand unsupervised learning as well. So assume that instead of telling what each component is, if you just give a basket of all fruits and you tell a kid to automatically segment them into each fruit category. So you have never told him or her that apple looks like this, banana looks like this, or anything like that. You just give him or her a basket of fruits and then ask them to cluster it. So what they are going to do is identify all the fruits that are similar in shape and color. So they'll put all the apples to one side, they'll put all the bananas to one side, and similarly they'll keep all watermelons to one side. So this task of automatically segmenting given data into different clusters. So here cluster 1 is apple, cluster 2 is bananas, cluster 3 is watermelon. So automatically segmenting data is unsupervised learning. Here we do not have any labels. By labels I mean we did not tell or introduce any categories like apples explicitly or bananas. We are just asking them to cluster them into different categories that they see automatically. So this is unsupervised learning. Then what is reinforcement learning? So let's take a small example where you're trying to teach your kid basketball. So you never program explicit rules like telling the kid that first you try to hit certain point and it should then go and fall in the basket. Then you never teach them to hit with a certain velocity in certain direction. All you try to teach on a higher level is you try to reward them when they throw in the basket, and you try to tell that there is a penalty when you do not throw into the basket. So that is the overall reward and penalty that you just on a higher level tell them. And what they'll try to do is every time they get a reward, they're incentivized to do that more. So they'll try more and more to learn to do the task automatically, which is to throw the basketball into the basket automatically. So similar thing is you teach the machines to learn to do a task automatically with rewards and penalties instead of again programming with explicit rules. So a machine can learn to play chess or learn to play complex games like Go or any other, even computer games like GTA, Vice City, etc. You can teach a machine to play a game automatically, and that concept is called reinforcement learning. Now that we have an understanding of supervised, unsupervised, and reinforcement learning, we will move ahead. But just before moving ahead, one thing to understand is that under supervised learning, there are several algorithms again. So here we are giving label data. In our example, we are giving 100 examples of males and 100 example of females, images of both of them, and teaching a kid to automatically identify. Now, just like each kid has individual brain and there is certain way of how they learn, there are several algorithms as well under supervised learning that we will use, and for different use cases different algorithms are suited better. So there are algorithms like decision trees, support vector machines, deep learning, regression. All these algorithms are under the category of supervised learning. Now today our goal is not to go into the mathematics of the algorithms, but rather understand that these all come onto the branches of supervised learning. And if you see my slide, I have emphasized on deep learning. So it is very important to understand deep learning because one thing to understand is that among all the algorithms that are present today, deep learning is one of the most used and most popular algorithms. And we will see a reason why soon, why we use deep learning so much more than all of the algorithms that are out there. But just to get an understanding, deep learning actually falls under machine learning, and deep learning is also called as neural nets. So neural nets, neural networks are class of algorithms that were in existence from a long time. But what happened is, with the compute power that we got, with the power of technology in the recent last 6 to 10 years, we have boosted neural networks to become larger and larger and solve much bigger problems that are existent in the artificial intelligence domain. And that's how deep learning evolved. Moving further on, so like I just said, let's take a moment and keep special focus on deep learning, because deep learning is one of the biggest toolkit existence in today in the artificial intelligence, and most of the state of the art research, everything is carried out by deep learning. So like I said, the umbrella is the bigger umbrella is artificial intelligence. Underneath that we have machine learning, and we have deep learning under machine learning. Uh, Looks
Yes.
like we have a
Hello.
small disturbance. So can
Hello.
you please mute yourself?
Yeah, good
Um,
morning. Yeah, சொல்லுங்க.
Yeah, sorry, Gautam.
yeah, no worries. Sorry for the interruption. We'll continue with on our talk. So we have deep learning. So deep learning is a part of machine learning,
Okay.
and the biggest and the most important point of deep learning is
So you want
it is the
to
closest algorithm that we have today
okay.
to
You didn't get
simulate how
could
a
you get the
human
link, sir?
brain works. So these are called artificial neural networks. And what we do here is, just like we have
Okay, okay. I
neurons
will
in
send
our
you my
brain that are connected to each other, and like a kid has neurons in his brain, and whenever we teach something, he or she learns automatically using the connected network that is in their brain. Similarly, we create a connected network of artificial neurons with computer algorithms, and that is called deep learning. And why did deep learning take off to such an extent is that, first, in the recent years, because of lot of compute, we are able to do able to implement all these algorithms at a larger scale. And also there is huge influx of data that we are gathering, and to train all these algorithms we need quite a lot of data, and deep learning is specially suited to solve problems when there is huge data, and it is the closest algorithm that we have that tries to emulate human brain. Now one small thing to understand is that, what are these neurons? So in humans, we in human brain we have neurons, but what are these neurons that are in deep learning that we use in computers? So to understand that, we'll just start with basic understanding of each individual neuron. So every, like the green circle that you see here or the blue circle that you see here, each of them is a neuron. A neuron in mathematics is simple in the sense that it takes in some input values. Let's say there is parameter 1, parameter 2, parameter 3 that just has values. Let's say, for example, number 3, 4, 5 that are coming in. Now, this neuron takes in those numbers and tries to multiply them with a fixed weight, let's say zero point 0.5 or 0.75, and it accumulates them, and then it passes the value or not based on a threshold. So, it is just a simple um, function that takes in some values and multiplies them with a fixed coefficients, and based on a threshold of the output value it passes or not. In simple, that is what an artificial neuron is. We don't need to go further than that for today's talk, but it is just to help us understand. Now, assume that once you connect a million of these neurons together, then you form a network. And what happens is this network can try to simulate a human brain inside a computer and solve the problems that we are seeing in our day-to-day life. Now, moving further on, under the umbrella of artificial intelligence, we have computer vision. So, what is computer vision? So, mainly, just like the same way we as humans have two eyes and we are able to understand the world around us, computer vision is the branch of AI that focuses on understanding images as well as videos and trying to infer details from them. So, if you are able to see an image and immediately identify there is a horse in the image, we try to make algorithms do the same to understand uh, whatever human eye sees. And similarly with videos. So if you see a video, you can understand. If you watch a game, you can see through a sequence of uh, images in the video, see a small clip in the video, and understand that someone is hitting with a bat, hitting a cricket ball with a bat. Now, with algorithms, you can similarly understand and tag that portion of the video as automatically classified as hitting with a bat. Now, all those algorithms come under the idea of computer vision. Just understanding it a little more with practical sense. So, if you open up your phone camera, whenever you try to take a picture, there is a small square that comes around the human face. So all those algorithms fall under the face detection, are called as face detection algorithms. And sometimes when you upload all your photos to uh, Google Photos, or when you upload to Facebook, automatically Facebook notifies, do you want to tag your friend, let's say Subramaniam, on this automatically? So that is called face recognition. So these are all computer vision algorithms that are in play in real life. And second example is optical character recognition. So nowadays, if you write something with hand on a paper and you take a picture of it, snap a photo of it, it can automatically convert your handwritten notes into editable text. That is an example of optical character recognition. So the example that I mentioned, automatically tagging of image, if you upload all your photos on your Google Photos, then you can search for, let's say, you want to identify all the car pictures in your images. If you just type cars at the bottom, at the top, it will Google Photos will retrieve all the images of cars. So that is an example of automatically tagging an image. And coming to cutting edge research, actually, computer vision algorithms, or these AI algorithms called GANs, generative adversarial networks, they can actually generate images. So they can generate human images, especially faces, to the point that that person does not exist on planet Earth, and they can generate some very genuine human faces with just computer vision algorithms and AI algorithms. And it is impossible for with a naked eye to differentiate whether that is a computer generated image or it's a real person on the earth. So computer vision and AI is picking up to the point that now we can manipulate videos and images, so that it is very important to so it is very important for us to be aware that algorithms have advanced so much that we need to be careful and do not believe whatever we see. And going further, few other examples are virtual reality. So you might have seen headsets that that are artificial reality or augmented reality or virtual reality headsets. Those are also computer vision applications. So there they try to track your eyeball, and wherever you're moving, the environment also changes accordingly. And so that's an example of computer vision. Then drone terrain mapping. So if a city wants to understand how how infrastructure is being built. Then what they can do is they can have a set of drones and take the whole terrain and make a 3D map of the terrain and continuously monitor them over time for like 6 months, 1 year, so that whenever there is an illegal construction happening, you can automatically identify with algorithms with from these drone mapped images and notify the concerning authorities to take action. So these are all computer vision applications. Now coming to natural language processing. So apart from eyes uh, that can and see images and videos, we can also read text, and using our mouth we can also speak, and with ears we can understand the language. So essentially natural language processing is a subfield of AI that uses algorithms to understand and modify human language, which is text and speech combined. Now let's go to the applications of NLP to understand better. So, so the same voice assistants that I mentioned, like Alexa, Siri, Google Home, all of these are natural language processing applications, because you can speak something to Siri and it will understand. You can speak something to Alexa, it will understand and respond to you. So first part is speech to text. So whatever you speak, it can convert that to text. Then using the text, it can search a database. Let's say you're asking who is the uh, president of United States. So it will convert whatever you spoke to text, and it will perform a query on the database that it has, fetches, let's say, Donald Trump, and then it will respond with a text to speech engine and spell out Donald Trump. And nowadays, it has advanced to the point that you can say some speech in any accent, let's say Indian accent or American accent or Australian accent, all of these. So all this speech processing is also evolving quite a bit. And the state of the art is such that if you give a 1 minute or 2 minute audio clip of yours, now it can generate new speech with the same voice, as if someone, a dubbing artist, has dubbed your voice. So the state of the art is at that place in NLP. Now coming to another example, question answering system. So just like the example that I mentioned, if you ask who is the president of United States, and if you have a document that has this answer, you can use natural language processing algorithms to automatically retrieve Donald Trump as the correct answer and answer the question. So where is this helpful? Suppose if a customer asks a question, can I how long is the uh, when does my credit card expire or something like that, instead of assigning somebody to do that, if there is a document, you can automatically retrieve the correct answer and automate that process with a chatbot. So that is one application. Now coming to text summarization algorithms, that's another example. So if there is a news article, you don't want to read those whole 100 lines or 200 lines, and you can use text summarization algorithms to probably identify the key top 5 sentences or 10 sentences so that you can understand and move on if you do not have time. Then chatbots, like I mentioned, and sentiment analysis. So what is sentiment analysis? So if a customer left a review on your Google App Store or something like that, that this product is not good or this product is good, then automatically classifying it as good or bad, the review is sentiment analysis. And we have seen example of machine translation. Now, what are the steps of model development? So till now, I talked about artificial intelligence model. There is a trained model, all of these. But let's go a little bit deeper, and of course, we'll stay at a higher level without involving mathematics. But understand, what does learning mean? So first, there is this pipeline that we need to follow. So it is not a fixed pipeline. We can combine few of them together. But on a higher level, you do some data collection. So going back to our example, we have 100 images of males and 100 images of females taken from our family album. So that is data collection. Now data preparation. So once you have collected images, why do you need to prepare data? Because not all of them are ready for learning. When I mean by that, let's say some of the images have side faces where you as a human itself are unable to identify, correctly classify gender because they are very far away, or they are turned to the side, or there is only part of the image that is visible. So you need to clean up all those images. That is the data preparation before you show it to the kid to teach them how to identify. Now choosing a model. Here choosing a model is almost like choosing a brain that you want to uh, train your model on. So why I'm emphasizing more on choosing a model is that you can get the most powerful, uh, most intelligent model and use that model for everything. But the problem is there are several factors involved here, which is uh, inference. So every time, next time when you show an image to the kid, if it takes, let's say, 5 minutes to identify whether it is male or female, then it's not valid for us, right? We don't want a complex algorithm running in the brain to do the task. So we pick we pick the model or the artificial intelligence brain that is suitable for our task, that can do our task without taking too much time, and it can be deployed onto production environment in the cloud, and we can do inference on it. Inference means identifying a new image and classifying it. So we pick a model on all those characteristics. Then there is training. So we'll go deeper into training in the coming slides. Then we evaluate. So evaluation is the fact that instead of showing the same images that you trained on, can you get new images and asking the kid to identify whether the image he or she is a male or female. Now there is parameter tuning and deployment. So these we'll go into each of these soon. So let's take a different example to just understand the model deployment. Um, so here we are taking a language translation model. So you have lot of English and Spanish pairs. Pairs, by pairs I mean there is an English sentence and then there is a Spanish sentence corresponding to that. Now this is data collection. Now choosing a model. Like it said, you have to choose your model based on several parameters. One is, if you want to train a complex artificial intelligence model, probably it will take lot of days. So here taking a lot of days means taking also compute. So if you have machines, then it is electricity bill, or if you're using cloud machines, then it is direct cost that you're paying. So you have to choose a model that is simpler to train for our use case. Now there might be use cases that are complex, so you might need a complex model as well. And you choose a model based on amount of training data that you have as well, and what kind of accuracy that you're looking at. So taking all these parameters, you choose a model, and once you choose the model, you train the model. So what does it mean by training the model? Like I've shown previously, there is an, let's say there is a neural network, and each neural network has a neuron, and that neuron, I have mentioned that whatever we input parameters that we are getting, we are multiplying that input parameters with a fixed weight, with fixed weights, and then we are summing them up, and then we are passing that value on to the next stage. Now those weights are the ones that we need to train here. And our deep learning model, what it does is continuously it improves and updates the weights uh, as we are training the model. So training the model means showing a million of these true false sentences and asking the model to learn from these, sorry, not true false sentence, but English sentences and Spanish sentences, and asking the model to learn from this. Now once the model is trained, what happens is it will continuously update its weights to try and get the translated sentence as close to the uh, actual translated output as possible. So that is what we are doing here in model development. Now, what is evaluating a model and tuning the parameter? Let's say we trained with 1 million English and Spanish sentence pairs. Now we will show a new set of 10,000 English sentences that the model has never seen, and we try to evaluate how well the model is performing on the new set, and we try to get the accuracy of the prediction, like how many of the 10,000 sentences did it get it right in translating. Now depending on that, we go and change our model or tune the parameters of the model itself. By that I mean, if you're designing a neural network, you can choose how big the network should be and how wide the network should be. So all those parameters you can modify and retrain the model again to get the desired accuracy. And once you have enough accuracy, what you do is you deploy the model. So right now, so far the model has been in your computer or laptop or GPU that you are training. Now that model should be available for the whole organization or the world to be used. So you use cloud components like Amazon Web Services or Google Cloud Platform, Microsoft Azure, and deploy the model. So this process of deployment, we need to take care of two things. One is the model is highly available. That means whenever someone wants to translate in the night or sometime during holidays, is it available and ready to just get the translated sentence in a matter of milliseconds? So that is availability. And what is scalability? Scalability means that if a million people or 1 billion people are using your Google Translate engine at the moment, can you get translated output for all of them simultaneously? So that addressing uh, that point of scaling up to use to be used by thousands or millions of concurrent users, that is the problem of scalability. Now this whole process of deploying the model comes under the DevOps process, which we'll mention further along. Now we come to the end of our first part, which is introduction to AI, all of its components, and what does training a model mean. Now we'll go on to the next topic of preparing students for jobs in AI. So with the advent of modern technologies, so one of the main things that happens is with industry as well as academia, there is a small gap that needs to be bridged. Sometimes it is big gap, I would say, because people who graduate immediately are not matched with the skills that are required in the industry. So it is a major problem to companies as well as academia, institution, colleges to uh, shorten that gap and make all the students job ready, because only when we make them job ready, then they are useful to the real world. Otherwise the coursework that they have learned, uh, if they are not able to fetch a job, then it might not be that useful. And also on the company front, they have a lot of job openings, but they do not have students who fill those requirements. So taking that aspect, I'm focusing on preparing students for jobs in AI so that we reduce that gap between corporations and companies that are hiring versus institutions that are preparing the students and bridging that gap. So what is the essential coursework for students? So from my understanding of being in AI for the last 6 years and taking hundreds of interviews of data scientists, either hiring for our organization or for my friends' organizations, what I've realized is that on a higher level, the coursework that is very necessary is Python, data structures and algorithms, statistics and probability, machine learning, deep learning. So this is the essential coursework that is fundamental for any artificial intelligence programmer who is working in this field. Now there are specialization. So not everyone can be good at everything. So what happens is mostly students try to go into one sub branch of AI or the other, which is going into computer vision if they are interested in processing images or videos and understanding data, or going into natural language processing if they are interested in these voice applications or text applications where they want to do machine translation, Google translation, things like that. Then few of the students are very involved in cloud deployment and they enjoy that process. So that process is called DevOps. So they can go into production deployment as well. So as teachers, I think we have to give common coursework that is shown here, and then we can provide specializations for students to take individually based on their interest. Now, one of the main things is how do job titles look at the entry level? So, as of just yesterday, I collected few job titles from various sources like LinkedIn and Angel List, all of these job sources. So, how do the job titles look like at entry level? So, entry level is mostly associated with job titles like junior and associate. Sometimes they might not have those words as well, but if you look junior or associate, then it's a right job for a new graduate to go and apply. So the job titles in AI look like this, where you have data scientist, or it could be machine learning engineer, or a Python developer with a focus on one of those that I discussed. So Python developer with a focus on computer vision, or Python developer with machine learning background or NLP background. Then, or it could be a traditional backend engineer who works on databases, infrastructure, along with some machine learning skills. So you can look at these job titles, and everything falls under the umbrella of AI and data science that we discussed. And moving further on, so one thing that I always focus on is it is very, very important to be practical in this world whenever you're trying to apply for jobs or any of those. So that's why instead of hiding the truth, I wanted to put it out there and tell among these subfields which jobs are more. Where is the quantity of jobs that is higher in number? So one thing is traditional machine learning and data science. Those jobs are very high in number. Then followed by computer vision and natural language processing. So it is very important for students to focus on getting their machine learning fundamentals and data science fundamentals right, so that they are at least job ready. And since it is a competitive world, we need to look at what jobs are more. So I've given that the top job profiles are machine learning engineer and computer vision engineer and natural language processing engineer in that order. Now there are lesser number of jobs because the specializations are niche sometimes. So when it comes to speech processing, the jobs are less. So to be honest, Alexa, Google Home, all of those are speech processing applications. But when we come to real world, only few companies are working on speech processing applications. So the jobs are less in number. So whenever you're choosing that branch, you need to be aware of that practical scenario. I'm not saying students to not follow that, but if you are in speech processing, you need to work extra harder to build strong research portfolio, because there are lesser number of jobs and it is competitive. And similarly, reinforcement learning jobs. So I told that reinforcement learning is trying to teach machines to play games automatically, or trying to teach robotics to do a certain task automatically. So those jobs are also slightly lesser in number, because it is a new research field that is evolving, and um, most of the companies might be using traditional algorithms and have not adapted to the new algorithms. So one of the main things is, once it is very, very important to be practical in this world whenever you're preparing for job. That's why I'm giving you these things. And these things change continuously, so do not take my word for granted, but rather tomorrow, 1 or 2 years down the line, some of the other jobs might be higher in number. So it is very important to know what is the current trend in AI as well. Now, one more thing is, uh, I also wanted to put an emphasis on AI jobs for non-coders, because not everyone is interested in programming as such. They want to be associated with cutting edge research in AI and be on top of the game. But simply put, not programming is everyone's cup of tea, and probably some people want to move to non-programming jobs further down the line. Probably they want to join as programmers and be on programmers in the early stages of career, but once they have let's say family or other things, they want to move on to other types of jobs as well. So for them, I wanted to list out AI jobs for non coders as well, which is, first thing is AI product manager. So who is a product manager? So just like a CEO, a product manager owns a particular product. A product means in a company there are so let's say we have Byju's, then there is learning app. So in the learning app, maybe there is a teaching component, then there is a serving that content for the students component, and then there are several technology components within that learning app itself. So there is one product manager for each of these, heading the division. So a product manager is like a mini CEO for that division. He or she will try to create a roadmap, and he or she will work with software engineers as well as higher authorities like CEO or CTO, take directions from them and uh, give a vision and direction for the product, and find what features need to be included in the next version of product, and have them implemented by the software team. It is mostly a non-technical in the sense that non-coding job, where you stay on the layer of analytics. Now there are data labeling or annotation jobs. Like I told, there is training preparation, right? So someone needs to go and collect all of these English to Spanish translation pairs. So that job, and someone needs to edit if some of them are not very good. Some of the training examples are not good, they need to delete. So all of this task of data collection, labeling, annotation also falls under uh, the jobs that are non-coding. Then there are AI testers. So once you build an AI application, there are testers who test whether it is working as expected. Then there is marketing for AI products. So if your uh, passion is going into business in the future, then you can move into marketing roles where you market the AI products that are developing, understanding them completely because of your previous background. Then you can bridge that gap of technical as well as marketing, and be able to market a product very well because you have a deeper understanding as well. Moving further on, uh, going into interview preparation. So we need to focus. So even today, a lot of focus is on coding tests. So it is important to practice coding tests on platforms like Lead Code or HackerRank, and practice data structures and algorithms. For AI jobs in particular, there is focus on probability and statistics. So mean, median, mode, and most of the statistic algorithms like variance and other things. And then machine learning and deep learning fundamentals. And one of the main things that people miss in their interviews is uh, learning the projects, so explaining the projects that they have on their resume very well. So before going into an interview, understand, revise your projects that you have listed on your resume, and go deeper in them so that you are able to explain them well. Going further, for faculty, it is very important to not just teach all the components, but rather improve leadership skills to the students as well. So encourage students to run communities, encourage students to invite speakers from other colleges into their college, or from corporations or companies into their colleges, and give talks. Then encourage students to bring AI awareness among the common audience, so they can go back to their high school and give an introductory talk about AI. And also encourage students to form local study groups so that they can discuss every week on research papers that are coming along. and improve their overall collective knowledge. Going further, for students, how can they build an portfolio? Because nowadays, with just having a coursework or graduating from a college uh, is not enough in this competitive world. So what they need to do is they need to work on some side projects that are unique. So uh, so they are called as capstone projects by some colleges, where an a student is encouraged to come up with their own project and work on it. So work on side projects and post it on GitHub. Uh, then write about your learnings or your side projects and blog about them on platforms like Medium. Then stay active on LinkedIn. So connect with, network with other people on LinkedIn and follow some of the people in data science so that you get to know the state of the art research. Then continuously attend any AI meetups in your city and network as well. Then apply for summer internships using Internshala or LinkedIn. So these are my tips for building portfolio. Moving further, so since we are running out on time, I'll just have a brief overview. So there are startups. Startups are like new companies that are born, and corporates are the companies that are in existence. So when graduating, it is important to choose between it is important to choose what kind of job role that you're taking. So with startups and corporates, there are some pros and cons. It's not that one is better versus the other. It also boils down to uh, your financial situation and your risk appetite on choosing a startup job versus corporate. So in short, you can grow faster in startups because there are lesser people. You can take quite a lot of work and accelerate and have a faster career. Whereas in corporates, you go through this traditional scale of going from like software engineer to senior software engineer, then software engineering manager or principal software engineer, and then all of those pathways. Then corporates give you job stability and all, whereas startups are volatile since they are new, they need to adapt. So maybe there's not that much job stability. And startups mostly stay on the applied AI layer. So they mostly take existing algorithms and apply them. Of course, once the startup grows beyond the initial company stage, it will also go into research. But if you want to do research immediately, then corporates are better suited for that. So moving further, how do you progress in your career? So one of the main things is, apart from the job, it is very, very important to keep up with the trends. That means doing some online courses on sites like Udemy or Udacity or Coursera, and then following blogs like Medium for state of the art research. Then work on side projects. Even at work on side projects and show it to your manager, and network with your peers in the field. Then discuss your career progression plan with your manager. So in South India, we have a very famous saying: if you don't ask, even mom does not provide food. So I believe in that genuinely. So if you're working hard and you're working on extra side projects and you want to progress in your career, discuss the same with your manager in team meetings. Explain that you are taking these initiatives so that he or she is aware to reward you the same and help you in your career progression. So it is very important to tell your manager also what you're expecting from the job. Now we have only 2 slides left, so we'll wrap up shortly. So what is my job at my current company, Right Hand Cybersecurity? So in at my current job, I automatically generate assessments. So in short, if you pick up a textbook, at the end of textbook, you have questions like true or false questions, multiple choice questions, fill in the blanks questions, some assessment questions. So I try to automatically do that for our company policy documents. Now, phishing and malware detection. So nowadays, you might have seen emails that you got selected to a lottery and give your details, and we will send you the lottery information. So all those emails that you get, get or called under fish or fall under phishing emails. So my job is to automatically identify those spam emails and classify them as spam as non-spam and build similar things at our company. Then automatic creation of training modules for cybersecurity awareness. So in a company, not everyone is well informed when it comes to cybersecurity. So we provide training modules for them to be aware so that they do not click on these phishing or spam emails accidentally or unknowingly. So we provide training. So I automate that process with AI. Now, coming to the end of our presentation, I want to thank uh, MOP Vaishnav College for Women for giving me this opportunity to share my knowledge and help a wider audience. So I want to especially thank Dr. Lalita, Dr. Sunita, Dr. Shakti, Gavari, and Jayanti for coordinating with me and organizing this talk. And now we'll move on to question and answers. So you can reach out to me on email or LinkedIn as well, as you can see. Now we'll open up the session for some question and answers. Great.
Thank you, Gautam. That was a wonderful and elaborate, clear, and informative session. You will be on screen. Any questions popping up, I will be displaying it to you on your screen.
Sure.
To start off, what is the role of robotics in education, and how will it be useful to me as a teacher?
Okay. So one of the main applications is that nowadays there are these personal robotics. So on phone we have, let's say, we have Alexa on device, or and we have Siri on phone, right? Similarly, what people are doing actually is to build small robots that can teach students as they are growing. So personal robotics might be a thing in the future where you have a small device that will teach mathematics, science, or some small social, all these aspects to kids as they grow. So personal robotics is one thing that is growing in this field, and there are some startups especially working in this area. Yeah.
Thank you, Gautam. Moving on to a
Yeah.
question asked by one of the participants.
What is the scope for a cognitive scientist in the field of AI? So, so just a disclaimer. I don't know if I understand the cognitive scientist word completely, but with my understanding, I will try to give an answer. So, one main thing is that AI is not just independent; it's an interplay of many disciplines. What I mean by that is, even when you're designing these natural language processing systems, when you're translating from one language to another, you do not just completely directly collect lot of English and Spanish pairs. You actually sit with computational linguists who understand language, and you help them design some of the things working with computational linguists. So similarly, what happens is, when it comes to cognitive scientist, so when you're designing this application, let's say a robot is navigating in a firefighting scenario, and it needs to identify people and respond and bring the people outside from the fire environment. What happens here is, we take help of these behavioral scientists and cognitive scientists to also build empathy for the robot, for the systems that we are developing. One of the main concerns of AI systems is that it does not have empathy and this conscience in them as we humans do, and it is a very very big research problem that people are working on and actively working with cognitive scientists to build all these aspects into AI systems to develop even the emotional side of things as good as humans. Yeah.
Thank you, Gautam. We'll go to the next question.
Yeah. Can AI self learn and develop too? The answer is yes. So if you take reinforcement learning, where it is learning to play a game, it can self learn and develop on its own if you just leave it in an environment, it will automatically learn. That means if you just let it play a game like GTA Vice City or Counter Strike or PUBG even, automatically AI will learn to do that. But one disclaimer is that none of the AI is up to the point that it can automatically do the task and we can rely on it. Everything is in research phase. Yeah.
Next question.
Can you suggest some freeware for artificial neural networks? So, one of my go-to for free coursework is Coursera. So you can start with Coursera, where you can audit a course without paying. So you get the complete video lectures. That is one of the main things. And other thing is, if you go to Udacity as well, there are some free courses, and on Udemy as well, there are some free courses. So you can use all of these. And nowadays there are very good blogs, so you can use Medium as well, and people have collectively put all the important links that I've seen into GitHub projects as well. I would say first start with Coursera. Yeah.
Thank you. The next one.
How AI is changing the banking sector. Great. So in banking sector, the main problems are, one of the things is to keep up to date with the changing regulations. So AI is helping to identify, understand these regulations, and continuously update and notify whether a company is non-compliant. Because if a company is not compliant with regulations, they have to pay a huge penalty if someone finds that out. So one aspect is that, and the other aspect is, generally if you want to give loans to to people, you want to identify their credit history. So identifying whether a person is eligible for loan or not, all these finance management, all of these fall under banking sector itself, and the AI plays a huge role in classifying customers into risk versus non-risk profiles, and coming up with several things for banking sector to push out features to these people based on their segments as well. Yeah.
Okay, I think with that we can come to the end of the session. Any more questions?
Great.
Okay. So I, on behalf of the Department of Computer Science, take this opportunity to first and foremost place my humble pranams to our presiding deity. Thank you, Gautam.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you, everyone, as well.
Yes.
I'll just finish off in 30 seconds. Yeah. So thank you everyone for joining the webinar as well, and it is my pleasure to share the knowledge, and I thank Vaishnav College again for giving me the platform to help share the knowledge. If you have any doubts, you can reach me via LinkedIn, or you can drop me an email, and I can help in my capacity to help you get started with AI or answer your questions. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Gautam. With this, we come to the end of our webinar. I, on behalf of the Department of Computer Science, take this opportunity to first and foremost place my humble pranams to our presiding deity for giving us this wonderful day. My sincere and heartfelt gratitude to the resource person, Mr. Ramshri Gautam, to have shared his knowledge and time with us today. I thank our management, our secretary, Sri Manoj Kumar Santalia, our principal, Dr. Lalita Balakrishnan, our vice principal, Dr. D. Uttira, my colleagues from the various departments of the college and other colleges, and above all, the participants for your active participation. Thank you, one and all. E-certificates will be provided to all participants on or before 30th May on submission of a feedback form, which will be sent to your email ID. Stay home, stay safe, stay connected. Thank you.